The spaceship Aurora drifted silently through the black expanse between the stars, its hull glinting faintly under the light of a distant binary system. Inside, the hum of machinery was constant, a gentle reminder that they were far from home, far from Earth, and deep into territory that no human had ever explored. Commander Elias Rowan leaned against the viewport, his eyes fixed on the swirling colors of the twin suns reflecting off the planet below. Capri Prime looked like a jewel against the darkness, its oceans shining a strange metallic blue and its continents etched with patterns that seemed deliberate, almost artificial. Elias had trained for years for missions like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the sense of unease that had grown in his chest since entering the Capri system. Something about the planet felt intelligent, observing him, waiting. "Commander," a voice said behind him. It was Lieutenant Mara Singh, the youngest officer on the Aurora. Her tone carried the usual mix of excitement and caution that officers felt when encountering something utterly unknown. "The delegation is ready. They're asking to meet us in the observation chamber." Elias straightened, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. "Very well. Let's see what our hosts have prepared for us." The observation chamber was a wide, circular room with walls of transparent alloy, allowing a clear view of Capri Prime below. At the center of the chamber stood the aliens for the first time. They were immediately startling, even from a distance. The two of them, identical in every detail, mirrored each other perfectly. Their skin shimmered faintly in iridescent tones, and their eyes were a sharp gold, unblinking, studying. They moved as though connected by some unseen bond, a synchronization that seemed to extend beyond simple coordination. Elias approached cautiously, his crew following behind him. The air was thick with tension, not hostility, but a kind of curiosity that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. When the twins finally spoke, their voices were separate yet merged, distinct yet one. "You belong to us now," they said, in perfect unison. The words were not a threat, at least not in the sense humans usually understood threats, but the weight behind them was undeniable. Elias felt a shiver travel down his spine. His crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one moved. The alien's presence was too commanding to ignore. What do you mean?" Elias asked carefully. His voice echoed slightly in the chamber, betraying his attempt at calm. The twins tilted their heads, mirroring each other perfectly. "We have chosen you," one said. "Your mind is needed."
"You will serve as our problem solver. Your people may not understand, but you will."
Elias felt a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Chosen me? For what? I'm just a systems analyst, a commander. Nothing special."
"You underestimate your species," the second twin said.
"Your ability to think in ways we cannot, to act with unpredictability, is exactly why you were selected." The chamber was silent for a moment, the only sound the faint hum of the Aurora's engines. Elias tried to absorb the meaning of their words. It was not imprisonment. It was not an act of hostility. It was a claim, a declaration of necessity. Humanity had been identified, not for conquest, but for capability. One of the twins stepped forward and their movement was perfectly mirrored.
"You will come with us?"
"This is not optional, not because we demand it, but because it is required. Your people will not understand yet. You may resist, but it is not in your interest to do so." Elias's heart pounded. "You expect me to leave my crew? My ship?" "You will not leave," the twin said. "You will act in place, but your perspective will remain yours. You are needed to correct what cannot be corrected by our own minds." A wave of realization hit him. This was not a threat. This was an assignment, and not one that could be ignored. The alien society, perfectly logical and synchronized, had encountered a paradox, something that even their combined intelligence could not solve. And humans, with all their unpredictability, creativity, and emotional thinking, were the only ones capable of resolving it. Elias swallowed hard. And if I refuse? The twins tilted their heads again, a gesture so subtle it almost seemed deliberate. Refusal is impossible. Your species was designed to think beyond boundaries. You will think. You will act. You will belong to the solution. The crew looked at Elias, searching for guidance. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had always considered himself capable, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He was not just a commander here. He was humanity's representative in a world that did not operate on the same rules. Elias nodded slowly. I understand. I will cooperate. The twins' eyes, so eerily synchronized, seemed to soften ever so slightly. Then we begin, they said. The next hours passed in a blur of data, holographic projections, and strange Khepri symbols. Elias moved among them, taking in information that was beyond human comprehension at first glance. Structures of unimaginable complexity, networks of energy that seemed alive, patterns that shifted in ways humans had never observed. And through it all, the twins watched him, observing not with judgment, but with expectation.
You adapt quickly, one of them said. We underestimated the speed of your cognition.
It is impressive.
Elias forced a smile. I'm just doing what anyone would do, trying to understand.
No, they said in unison. You do more than understand. You innovate. You question. You see possibilities where there are none. This is why you were chosen. As the planet below rotated slowly, the twin suns casting shifting shadows across its surface, Elias realized the enormity of his position. He was a single human on a world that had not needed humans until now. He was both insignificant and essential, powerless in some ways and vital in others. The first day ended with the twins leading him to a chamber filled with ancient machinery, machines that had not been touched for centuries. Their operation was failing, systems collapsing because no Khepri mind could account for the irregularities that had emerged. Elias's task was clear. He had to find the fault, to restore balance where their logic had failed. He set to work, surrounded by the hum of alien technology and the gaze of the twins, whose synchronization seemed to watch not only his hands but his thoughts. Every calculation he made, every decision, was observed. There was no hostility, but there was no leniency either. He was the key, and failure was not an option. Hours turned into days. Elias slept little, ate less, and yet found a strange exhilaration in the challenge. His mind, trained on human unpredictability, began to see patterns where the Khepri could not, a minor misalignment in a sequence, a calculation based on human intuition rather than logic, led to the first correction in the failing system. The twins observed silently, their mirrored faces betraying nothing. Then, as the system stabilized, one of them spoke. This is acceptable. This is promising. You are capable. Elias felt a thrill of victory but did not let it show. It's only a start, he said. There's more to understand. Yes, they said. And there is more to correct. You belong to us now, and in belonging, you will act. Your people may not understand, but you will succeed where others cannot. As he looked out again at the twin suns dipping below the horizon of Khepri Prime, Elias realized that everything had changed. Humanity had been noticed, recognized for what it could do, not for what it had done. And he, a single human among billions, had become the first thread in a new story, one that could reshape the future of an entire civilization. For the first time, Elias felt the weight of human potential pressing against the unknown. And as he turned back to the machines, he understood that the real challenge was only just beginning. The twins had chosen him, but he would have to prove that humanity, in all its flawed brilliance, was worthy of the trust placed upon it. The next morning, Elias awoke to the soft hum of Capri machinery, his mind still racing from the previous day's revelations. The twins had not slept, or at least not in any way he could perceive. They had been waiting for him, their synchronized forms motionless at the edge of the chamber, eyes glowing faintly with the light of the twin suns filtering through the alloy walls. "You will follow," one of them said, their voices merging into a single tone, melodic and chillingly precise. Elias rose carefully, feeling the weight of responsibility in every step. He knew that the hours ahead would demand more from him than any training or experience on Earth could provide. They led him through corridors that defied conventional geometry, walls twisted at angles that seemed impossible, and passages branched in patterns that made his mind strain to maintain orientation. The twins did not walk, they glided, perfectly synchronized, their presence both mesmerizing and intimidating. Elias realized quickly that Capri Prime was not merely a planet, it was a living system of thought, a civilization constructed as an organism in itself, with every machine, every structure, every line of code acting as cells and neurons in a body of intelligence. At the center of this architectural complexity, they arrived at a chamber larger than any building on Earth. Towers of machinery spiraled toward the ceiling, networks of glowing filaments connecting devices in patterns that seemed almost alive. Holographic symbols floated above the towers, rotating and shifting in ways that suggested communication rather than decoration. "This is where your work begins," one twin said. "Here lie the systems that maintain the balance of Capri society. For centuries they have functioned perfectly. Now they falter. You must correct what our minds cannot." Elias stepped closer, studying the machinery. The hum was not uniform. It pulsed in a rhythm that seemed responsive, almost sentient. He reached out to touch a console, and a holographic display blossomed into the air, showing streams of data, equations, and symbols he had never seen before. It was overwhelming, but a strange part of him, the part trained in pattern recognition and systems thinking, felt a thrill of understanding. He began to work. Hours passed, though time felt strange in this alien place. His hands moved over controls, his mind racing to interpret the alien data. He made tentative adjustments, small corrections based on intuition rather than pure logic, and the systems responded immediately, stabilizing in ways that no Capri mind could have predicted. The twins observed silently, their mirrored faces unchanging, but Elias felt the weight of their attention. He imagined them recording every choice, every calculation, and somehow judging his capacity to understand what they could not. "You think differently than we do," one twin finally said. "Your species tolerates contradiction, imperfection, and uncertainty. These are weaknesses for you, but strengths for us. You see solutions where we see none. You are necessary." Elias swallowed. "I'm just doing what comes naturally," he said. "I look for patterns, yes, but I also take risks. That's human nature." "Yes," the twin replied. "And that is why you were chosen. You belong to us now, not because we control you, but because you are the key to what we cannot achieve alone." Days passed in a blur of calculations, adjustments, and observations. Elias began to notice patterns in the systems themselves, strange loops and feedback cycles that seemed to resist perfect logic. These loops were the reason Capri society had stagnated. Their synchronized minds could not account for uncertainty, for unpredictability, for the kind of improvisation that humans excel at. As he worked, Elias realized that the twins were not just rulers or observers. They were the paradox themselves. Their synchronization, while perfect, created rigidity. Any deviation, any risk, any error was impossible within their shared consciousness, and that rigidity had spread through their civilization, creating a society incapable of adaptation. One evening, as the twin sun set and the glow of Capri Prime softened, Elias paused to rest. The twins remained beside him, unblinking, their mirrored forms casting long shadows across the chamber. you are beginning to see, one twin said softly. The collapse is not in the machines alone, it is in us. We cannot change. We cannot adapt. Only an outside mind can introduce the possibility of change. Elias nodded slowly. Then I understand why you chose me. I can see what you cannot, but it is more than just solving problems. It is changing the way you think. Yes, the twin said. You must not only correct but teach, even if you do not realize it. Your presence introduces the variables that our logic cannot process. Your species is chaotic, yet effective. You are humanity. You are the solution. Elias felt the weight of that statement. Humanity had always seen itself as small in the vastness of space, fragile and limited. But here, on a world that seemed to defy reason itself, humans were the ones capable of creating order where perfection had failed. It was an exhilarating thought, yet daunting. The work grew more complex. Systems that had failed in cascading loops threatened to destabilize entire sectors of Crepri society. Elias found that every solution he applied was temporary until he understood the underlying pattern. It was not enough to fix what was broken. He had to teach the systems, and, indirectly, the twins themselves, how to process imperfection. At times, Elias questioned his own limits. He had never faced challenges on this scale before. The data streams were overwhelming, the patterns maddening. But each time he felt despair, he reminded himself of the words the twins had spoken. You belong to us, not in captivity, but in responsibility, not as a servant, but as a necessary force. One night as he worked alone, a realization struck him. The twins' synchronization, while perfect, created blind spots. They could not see outside the bounds of their mirrored thinking. But humans, who often contradicted themselves, who questioned even their own conclusions, could find paths through these blind spots. Elias began experimenting, introducing small, deliberate inconsistencies into the system, testing how the machines and the twins' perception reacted. The results were astonishing. Systems that had been failing for decades stabilized almost immediately. Processes that had seemed doomed to collapse now functioned again. And through it all, the twins watched, their mirrored faces betraying no emotion, yet Elias felt the faintest hint of approval in their gaze.
You are?
Changing the flow, one twin said. We observe, yet we cannot comprehend fully. Your human logic is alien, yet effective. You are teaching without teaching. This is unexpected. Elias smiled faintly. It is just how we think. We adapt. We take risks. We make mistakes, but we learn. That's how humans survive. Yes, the twin said. And now you survive not only for yourself, but for us. You introduce variables we cannot, and in doing so, preserve what we cannot maintain alone. You are the key. As the days passed, Elias began to feel a strange kinship with the twins. They were not human, but they were not hostile. They were bound by a logic that he could not fully grasp, yet he respected it. And in their unblinking gaze, he saw the first signs of trust. Not trust in the human race, but trust in him, as an individual. One evening, the twins brought him to a chamber that overlooked the surface of Capri Prime. The world below shimmered in shades of gold and blue, the twin suns casting shifting patterns across its oceans and continents. The machinery hummed around them, alive with energy and data, responding to every adjustment Elias had made. You see now, one twin said softly, the extent of what you affect, your presence, changes more than the systems. It changes us. It changes the balance.
You are not merely a visitor.
You are part of this world now. Elias nodded. He understood the meaning of the twins' initial declaration in a way he had not before. You belong to us now did not mean ownership or control. It meant responsibility. It meant recognition of his unique capability. It meant that humanity, through him, had become an essential part of a civilization far beyond their own understanding. And as he looked out at the planet, at the machinery, at the twins who had chosen him, Elias realized that he had crossed a threshold. Humanity was no longer insignificant in the galaxy. Here, on Capri Prime, the unpredictable, flawed, and brilliant mind of a single human was enough to reshape an entire world. The challenge ahead was immense. There were systems yet to stabilize, patterns yet to understand, and paradoxes yet to resolve. But, for the first time, Elias felt the exhilaration of possibility. The twins had chosen him not for his strength, nor his knowledge, but for his humanity. And in that humanity lay power, creativity, and hope. He turned back to the nearest console, fingers poised over controls, and began his work anew. He would make mistakes, he would take risks, but he would succeed. He belonged to this world now, and in belonging he had found a purpose greater than he had ever imagined. For the first time, Elias Rowan understood what it meant to be necessary, to be recognized, and to be human in a galaxy that had never before depended on humans in this way. And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon once more, he smiled, ready for whatever the next challenge would bring. The days blurred together as Elias worked tirelessly within the spiraling towers of Capri Prime's central chamber. The systems were vast, more complex than any simulation he had encountered on Earth. Each adjustment he made rippled through the network of machines, revealing new errors, hidden patterns, and paradoxes he had never imagined. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. He was learning not only how to think within this alien system, but also how to anticipate what no Capri mind could comprehend. The twins remained ever present, mirrored and silent observers, their golden eyes watching every motion and every calculation. Despite their perfection, Elias began to notice small nuances in their synchronization. Sometimes one would tilt its head a fraction of a degree differently than the other, or a flicker of hesitation would appear in their otherwise flawless attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it suggested a crack in their unity. Elias understood immediately. The twins themselves were the paradox. Their perfect synchronization had served their civilization well for centuries, but it also prevented innovation, adaptation, and unpredictability. Their society had stagnated, and only an outside mind, human, chaotic, and inventive, could introduce the possibility of change. A sudden alert blinked on one of the consoles, drawing his attention. The holographic display shifted to show signals from the edge of the Capri system. Unfamiliar spacecraft had entered their sector, moving with precision and intent. Elias recognized the patterns immediately. These were not exploration vessels. They were military-class ships, organized in formation, and headed directly for Capri Prime. The twins moved together toward the display, their presence commanding even as they observed the incoming threat. "A rival block approaches," one twin said. "They see our vulnerability. They expect collapse, weakness, and opportunity. We did not anticipate their timing." Elias's pulse quickened. He had dealt with complex systems, but not with potential war. "Can they breach your defenses?" he asked. "They can test us," the twin replied. "Our weapons are adequate, but we cannot fight uncertainty. They are counting on our rigidity to fail. That is why you are necessary. You introduce variables that our opponents cannot predict. You create possibilities." Elias swallowed hard. Humanity had never faced a challenge exactly like this. He had studied strategy, negotiation, and diplomacy, but this was a level beyond Earth. Yet he also recognized the opportunity. Humans thrived on unpredictability, improvisation, and risk-taking. If anyone could turn the tables, it was him. He immediately began analyzing the incoming ship's patterns, cross-referencing the alien data streams with his own understanding of strategy and human behavior. The formation was precise, yet rigid. If he could introduce a single unpredictable element, he might destabilize the attacker's assumptions. "Commander, a voice said over the communicator. Mara Singh, are you sure we should intervene? These ships could destroy the planet if they act quickly. Elias did not hesitate.
We don't just react, we anticipate.
Trust me, we have an advantage they cannot predict. The twins observed silently as he made adjustments to the planetary defense systems. Elias introduced subtle variations in the energy shield's patterns, minor fluctuations in the defense turret's targeting algorithms, and simulated miscommunications in the planetary sensors. From a human perspective, these were deliberate risks, but from the Capri perspective, they were revolutionary. Chaotic interventions that no synchronized mind could have conceived. The attackers arrived in orbit, weapons charged and scanning for weakness. For a moment, Elias held his breath, watching the data streams. Then, as the enemy ships engaged, they immediately began to experience anomalies. Their targeting calculations misaligned. Their coordination faltered. They hesitated where perfection demanded precision. The twins' golden eyes widened slightly, their synchronized focus breaking just long enough to suggest surprise. Elias allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Humanity's strength was not in perfection. It was in improvisation, in creativity, in risk-taking. And it was enough. Over the next few hours, the enemy fleet tested every defense Capri Prime possessed, but each move Elias introduced countered their logic. They were powerful, disciplined, and experienced, but they were unable to predict the chaos of human thinking. Slowly, the tide turned. The attackers, frustrated and confused, began retreating, realizing that Capri Prime's defenses were not failing. They were evolving. Elias exhaled, the tension leaving his body in a rush. The twins remained motionless, yet Elias could sense a subtle shift in their synchronization. The mirrored perfection was no longer absolute. A hint of independent thought, tiny and hesitant, flickered between them. You are changing the flow, one twin said finally, its voice softer, almost reverent. Your interventions preserve what we could not maintain. Your mind introduces adaptability, creativity, and unpredictability. You are remarkable. Elias shook his head. I'm just thinking like a human would. You didn't design these systems to handle unpredictability. That's where we help.
Yes, the twin said.
And that is why you belong to us now, not as a servant, but as a guide. You introduce variables we cannot. You teach without intending to teach. This is unprecedented. As the enemy fleet retreated, Elias realized the magnitude of his position. Humanity, through him, had protected an entire civilization, not through force, but through ingenuity. The Capri had relied on perfection, but perfection alone could not solve the problems of a dynamic, uncertain universe. Human adaptability, with all its flaws, had succeeded where logic had failed. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Elias worked tirelessly, stabilizing failing systems, predicting the ripple effects of each adjustment, and guiding the twins through a new way of thinking. He introduced controlled risks into energy distribution, transportation networks, and planetary communications. Each success reinforced the fragile trust developing between him and the twins. Despite their perfection, the twins began asking questions, not about procedures, but about reasoning, intent, and strategy. Why did you choose this method? One asked. Why not another? Elias explained carefully, knowing that his answers would challenge their understanding. Humans don't always follow strict rules. We consider multiple possibilities at once. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most logical one, but the one that adapts to change. The twins tilted their heads, processing the unfamiliar concept.
Adaptation?
Imperfection, uncertainty, one murmured. These are valuable. We did not anticipate that failure could be a teacher, that risk could be a guide. Elias smiled faintly. That's humanity. We survive by learning, by adjusting, by trying again when the first attempt fails. One evening, as the twin suns set, Elias and the twins surveyed Capri Prime from a high observation platform. The planet below pulsed with light and energy, the system stabilizing in ways that would have been impossible without human intervention. For the first time, Elias sensed not only trust, but admiration. The mirrored perfection of the twins was no longer absolute. They were beginning to see value in deviation, in unpredictability, in the human mind. "You have done more than stabilize systems," one twin said softly.
"You have introduced the concept of choice. You have changed us."
"We observe your methods, and we cannot replicate them, yet we understand their effect. You are indispensable." Elias nodded. He understood now that this was more than a mission. Humanity had proven itself, not through dominance, weapons, or conquest, but through intellect, creativity, and courage. The twins had recognized something in him, in humanity, that no civilization had before. The ability to act when perfect logic falters, to adapt when rigidity fails, and to thrive in uncertainty. The crisis had not ended. Elias knew the enemy fleet could return, and other challenges were inevitable. Yet, for the first time, he felt confident. Humanity was no longer an observer in the galaxy. It was a participant, a force capable of shaping outcomes where others had failed. "You belong to us now," the twins said again, echoing their initial declaration. But this time, Elias understood the true meaning. It was not ownership. It was responsibility, recognition, partnership. Humanity, through him, had become essential to a civilization far beyond Earth. And in that recognition, Elias felt a surge of pride, determination, and purpose. He would continue to work, to guide, and to innovate. He was human, and in being human, he had changed a world. As the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, casting Capri Prime into the gentle glow of night, Elias returned to the central chamber. Systems hummed with renewed life, glowing with energy and potential. The twins followed silently, their presence no longer intimidating but almost comforting. They had begun to learn what he had always known, that imperfection could be powerful, unpredictability could be a strength, and human ingenuity could be a strength, and human ingenuity could turn impossible challenges into triumphs. Elias placed his hands on the console, fingers moving over controls with confidence and precision. The galaxy might be vast, and challenges might be greater than any one mind could solve. But for now, he was ready. He belonged to Capri Prime, not as a captive, but as a catalyst. Humanity belonged here now, and the universe would never see him, or his species, the same way again. The hum of the machinery filled the chamber, steady and alive, as Elias prepared for whatever the future might bring. The twins watched, golden eyes reflecting the light of the stars. No longer flawless mirrors, but something new, something changed. Together, human and alien, they faced a galaxy full of uncertainty, ready to adapt, to learn, and to thrive.